I'm Susan, and let me show you another sugar skull necklace. I haven't done enough sugar skulls. I think I'm addicted. Anyway, I'm also giving this one away. If you comment, share, and subscribe, you could be in the winning. 1 month after I post this video, I will be giving it away. It's got lots of fun beads in it. It's a choker length, and it shows you different ways that you can add the pods with the 2 holes in it, the beads with the 2 holes, and you can string almost any bead this way that you create with 2 holes in it. So it's a very versatile tutorial because you can use this with lots of other things. You could use the rhinestone pods all up here. It doesn't necessarily have to be the skulls. It's not only just a technique, but also a design idea. So let's get started. So I'm back. Hopefully this works out. You've already seen what I've finished because otherwise I wouldn't be posting this. So let's get started. This is what I've laid out, hoping that it will work. And I've got some beads in the back here. Hoping that with the double strand I can string these skeleton skulls through here and then take this last skull and make it hang. So it's a little bit lower. If it works, who knows? But let's get started. So, oops, I forgot to put out some number 6 beads. Here, we'll use these gold ones. I need to start with a few of these size 6 seed beads. These you can get at local Joann's store in the US, but any size 6 gold seed beads will do. I'm going to add 5 size 11 seed beads and go through my marguerite bead because this, as usual, will be my toggle clasp. So if you've watched any of my videos before, you've pretty much seen this is where I start all the time. Now I am using Nymo thread that I have pre-stretched and still won't cooperate with me, but that's okay. I'm stronger than Nymo. I'm not giving up. I do not cut the thread off of the spool because I like to work with it on the other end. If you like to cut it, feel free, cut it. Whatever works for you. So I'm going to now add 5 more of the size 11 seed beads and go back, whoops, if they would stay on the needle, and go back through that size 6. Now this is when I like to tie a knot. And I do a surgeon's knot, which is over and under twice in each direction, and it locks it in, so this is not going to move. So if I don't want this here, it's easier to cut this apart than to try to pull it apart. Okay, now I'm going to start from this end, adding all of my beads around, because basically the first layer is just going to be this top hole that goes through the skeletons, the skulls, and I'm just going to add some crystals in between, which is kind of boring. So I am just going to, I think I'm going to use these pretty silver ones. I haven't decided whether I want silver or black, but let me just run through these and come back because, like I said, it's boring. So first change is I got these beads strung, and I am at this little rhinestone pod. Well, I have 2 holes in this rhinestone pod, and I definitely want to use both of them. So I've measured the distance between the holes, and I'm adding 3 of my size 11 seed beads and going through the first hole, because when I come back the next time, I want this to split up between them, and you'll know what I mean when you see this. So it's coming through that way. Now the next time I will take the thread and go through this other hole. So I will have a Y with these green seed beads. And that is how I want it to sit. So I'm going to continue and go through my sugar skulls and come back. So I'm up to the other end and I've added a loop of seed beads, and I really don't know how to tell you how many seed beads because every flower I make is different, so every flower you make will probably be different. So I just need to fit my marguerite bead through like a button, tight enough that it goes through easily, but not loose enough that it falls right out. Now I have added my 3 little seed beads, whoops, at the end, in between this center rhinestone pod, and I've added at the other ends. I'm going to go back through and I will meet you up here while we add the other green size 11. So I am back where the rhinestone pod is, and I'm going to add 3 more size 11s. I came out this number 6 and I have another hole in this rhinestone pod. Now my big question is, what am I going to add across here? I was thinking of adding my flowers in here, so yes, I think that may work. And I think I need to add another gold bead. I think this needs a little extra gold. And now this is where it gets a little fiddly again, because you've got to remember this is going to be in a curved formation. So you don't want to lay this flat, you want to lay it in a curve so you can see how much room I have in here, because if you have too many beads in here, it will create bulk and these beads will pop up and not lay correctly. So I am going to add my number 6 and see how far that gives me, because it's really important I don't overcrowd this. And trust me, how I know this? I've done it. Yes, I think that's probably enough. If I did have more room there, I would just add a size 11 seed bead in there, and that could fill in that gap. I wouldn't want to add like one of these larger crystals or something because it would be too bulky. So you've got to remember, on the neck it goes at a curve. So keep that curve while you're working. And so we'll just add the next flower in here. And this is why I lay them out, because while I'm talking I totally lose track of what the heck I'm doing. And this looks like there's a lot more room in here, but actually, I'm wrong. There isn't. So we'll just continue to go through here. Now gets the tricky part. Is we've got the pod, because we haven't added the other sugar skull yet. Oh, I ran out of 6s. Let me grab another. So since we haven't gone through the pod yet, we're going to want to go around this pod. I think that's probably good. I may add, you know what, I'm going to add 3 seed beads because I'd rather that this hung a little lower than hang too high and tight. Let's see how this goes. No, I can't add those seed beads. It's going to be too bulky. So this is where I leave this in, because I could edit this and just show you the easy way. I want you to see that sometimes your beads may have the room where you can add that and it would look better and you won't see the string. You need to play with this until you get the right amount. So I am just going to go through that second hole on my pod, and now I'm going to go through and restring back up here, go through my marguerite bead so I can reinforce it, and then come back down here. So you don't need to watch that, that's kind of boring. So I'm back at this rhinestone pod here where we added the 3 little seed beads, and I am going to travel back through here towards the center rhinestone pod. The reason we're going this way is I've only gone through this once, so number 1, we got to reinforce it. And number 2, we've got to add our beads around the pod, at least this way, so that we can add our other skull down this way. So I will get all the way over to this pod and then meet you there. So I am back at the center big large rhinestone pod, and I have added 3 size 11 seed beads. So I have decided to go through the other side of this bead and add 3 more seed beads, and I'm going to go back up and through this. Now you can see my thread. It's very loose with these flowers. I prefer to have it a little loose than too tight and buckling up all funny, because I'm not exactly sure how this necklace is going to lay. I want to be cautious, so I'm adding 3 more, and I'm going back up through these skulls. So I'm reinforcing this, and I will go back up through all of the skulls, and I will go all the way up through here, reinforcing the entire necklace, and I will meet you back at the toggle of the clasp. So I'm back at the clasp, and I've gone around it once to reinforce it again, and now I'm going to go back through the first bead. I'm going to add 3 number size 15s, skip a bead, and go through the next. If you've already seen my other tutorials, I do this in every one, so you can skip ahead with this part. But if you haven't, it's real important to see this. So I add 3 beads, skip a bead, add 3 beads, skip a bead. So I'm going up and down and I'm creating this little picot. See these little points? And I will connect those together when I come back around the next time. So I will just finish going around this bead, skipping a bead, going through a bead, and adding these little points. And I will show you when we get to the other side here. So I've gone through the entire thing and I've got all my little picots. I'm going through the first bead and I'm going to go up the 2 first 15s that I put in. And that will lead me to that little peak right there. Then I'm going to add 3 little 15s and I'm going to go to the next peak. And this will tie them together, giving this beautiful little lacy reinforced type of a clasp. It also makes it much easier to put on because it keeps this open so it doesn't tangle up as much. So I'm just going to continue all the way around this, and then I will come back down at the pod over here. Right where this pod lets out, that's where I'm going to come back out. So I'm back down at the pod and I'm going to go through the bottom leg of my size 11 beads that I have at this rhinestone pod. And I'm going to go down and through to the other side of this flower. I want to hang these little leaves coming down. So the easiest way to do that would be to add 2 size 11s. We're going to add 1 size 6. And I was going to add black beads, but I'm thinking these silver beads probably will look better. I'm not feeling that since I've got so much going on this, that adding another color might not be a very good idea. Yeah, definitely not going to look better. So I'm going down, I'm making this into a fringe. I'm going to add a number 11 at the end as my stopper bead and go back up through. I will then go back through the flower and do the fringe down the other side and come back out. So I'm on the other side of the skull and you can see where I've just added my little fringe in, and that very simply fit in there. Now I am just going to tie a few knots and then go through and add my other fringes. I don't have that much thread left, so I probably won't make it past this pod right here. So I'm just going to add those other fringes, get to this pod, and show you how I start off on the other end. Okay, so I finished up with my thread at the other end, and I cut off this end, and I'm going to start at this end. And I'm basically going to go back up through my flower, add my last size 11 bead, and then come back down through to this rhinestone pod here. So I'll meet you back here because that's like watching paint dry. So I am back at the other half of the pod there at the lower part, and I am going to add the fringe in between the rest of these skulls. Now I had an accident and I'm leaving this intentionally to show you. I have a little piece of thread, let me see if you can see it here, that I did not pull through tight enough, and I knotted after I did it. So when I go back through there, I am going to show you how to fix this, because we've all at some point or another had one of these little boogers that pops out and you see, oh my god, how did I not pull that? It's very easy to miss. Don't cut it. Whatever you do, just don't cut it, just leave it. When I get to there, I'll show you how I fix it. So I'm going to run this fringe through and I will meet you back over here and we will fix this little boo-boo. Okay, so I'm back at the pod and there is my little nemesis, my little piece of thread, this booger as I'm going to call him, that is just sitting there in the lonely. And I'm sure everybody has had this happen if it hasn't just been me. I can't imagine I'm the only one that's had this happen. But it gets hung up on something, you just didn't pull it, especially when you get a lot of fringe, this can happen. And it's just downright annoying. Now there's 2 ways you can go with this. One is I like to tie a knot around the end of it. And the reason I'm tying a knot is now I can take it through. And I normally would go through this bead here, but I need a lot of that room because we haven't added our other beads. So I am going to take it through this side because I have some room. And I am going to just continue along until I get that thread buried in these other beads here. And you're going to have to fiddle with it and play with it and pull it really tight because it's not going to, like, there we go, like to cooperate. And so I'm just pulling it through these other beads here. And I can't go up till I get to this pod because there's nowhere to go. I don't have any beads that connect through there, and I don't want to start adding beads. So I am just, so you can see it got real tight there. Going to continue through. I'm going to go up through this pod and then over through this little kind of V I have here and come back up, and I'll be at the top of the pod when I come back. But that shows you how to get rid of that, and it does happen to all of us. Sometimes it's a blessing when it happens on camera because I can show you how to fix it. Okay, so I'm back at the pod and I'm not where I wanted to be. I wanted to be at this lower spot. I'm at the upper spot, which is going to force me to add some beads across the top here. Well, actually no, I could go through this Y now that I'm looking at it. Let me go through the Y, and that will bring me down to this lower spot. Sometimes you look at things too much, you don't see the way out. So I'm going to go to this lower spot, and now I am going to go through this pod on the bottom and come out the bottom. And I've got to decide how far down do I want the skull to hang. Now, since I have this fringe here, I kind of want them a little bit lower. So I'm feeling like some of these crystals would look really pretty. Let me get a cup. I think 3 of these crystals right in the top there would look really pretty. And we could use those as our go-through beads from the top to the bottom. So in order to get those to fit in, I am going to guess this because that's what I seem to do best. So I'm going to add 3 of my size 11s. I'm going to add all 3 of these crystals, another size 6, and 3 more size 11s, and see if that takes me around the bead. Now, if this doesn't, I'm going to have to unstring this and come back. It doesn't. I really needed 5 down from each of these. So I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to add 5 size 11s on each side, go through it, and come back. Okay, so the 5 size 11s worked really well, so I'm going to go back through those 11s, and I'm going to go to this center bead, the center crystal. I want to see how much room I have to adding my skull. And so it just depends how much do you want this to hang. If you want this to go lower, then you could go longer down around the skull. If you want it up high like this, then you go shorter. So it's once again a game of fiddle. There's no other way to put it, but it's just fiddling around. So I am just going to add a bunch of size 11 seed beads and see where this takes me as I fiddle to see if there's enough room to get into this side hole here. We're pretty close, so let's try that. And that's pretty good. So I'm liking that spot, and I don't mind the fringe hanging down where it is because it kind of looks like it's coming from his head. So I'm going to add some more size 11 seed beads to the other side and connect it. And I don't really know how many I need. It's, like I said, a game of fiddly sticks. You just keep playing with it, and you want to see how far you've got to go. Now, it gets a little tight in here, and I wish I could pick this up to get it closer. I think one more and I've got it. Let me see. I may have to pull this back out. No, actually, I think that works. So I'm going to go back down through this other side here, and I'm not going to pull it tight because it's too hard to show you. So once I go back down through the side, I am now going to go through this bead again. It's just easier to level this out and pull it tight after I go through the bead and make sure I have it where I want it. There we go. Yes, I do like it. Now I'm going to add beads that go to the second hole. And no, I have no clue how many beads I'm adding or how many beads I need. So we're just kind of measuring as we go, and probably 3 or 4 more. And I would say we're going to add 1 extra one and go through the other side. Now this becomes a game of which direction you're going to go in. And of course I have a knot. I want you all to see that it's not just you that has trouble with the thread, everybody does. It's just a challenge, and don't let it win. And let's see how many more I need on this side. Probably 2 less. Why do I have not enough and then too many? And once again, I'm going to go through this bead. And now I will go down through here again because I need a connector. And this will connect me to the bottom where I will go around to the chin. Now, if you feel that there's a little spot here, let me get a little closer. See how there's this little spot here? If you feel that bothers you and you want a bead in it, when you go back up and around through here, add another bead in there. It's no big deal. You can always add beads there. So I am just doing the basic go around. Kind of too hard to do it with it in the air, otherwise I would. So I'm going to continue to go around the bead, and then I will go around it once just to reinforce everything, and I may add a little bead in there. But it's really hard to get it exactly the first time, especially on camera when I'm talking, but even sometimes when you're not talking, you're just enjoying the moment of beading and you don't want to think, because sometimes beading is just being creative and not thinking. And you'll go back and say, oh, I wish I added a few more beads. Just add them. Don't worry about it. Just add them. You won't even see the thread. Nobody will even notice that you missed where you didn't put enough in there. Don't go crazy on yourself, and it's not worth pulling it all out. Now, if you're a little longer here, it's fine. Because I'm going to add some fringe, it'll hold this better. But if you're too short, it'll go behind the bead here and it won't look right. So you want to go just a little bit longer. So I will actually add 2 more beads than I actually need there. And I am going to go up and around this bead, and I'm going to come down on the side of the chin here where we're going to add the first fringe. So I added the other 2 little beads in here where I had a little gap, no big deal. And I am going to add just these little leaf fringes. I just want a little something at the end here, and I don't want this to be too long since it's a choker length piece. So I'm just going to add my crystals and my little leaves, and basically we're finishing this necklace up. It looks so complicated, and actually it was very simple. But don't tell everybody. That's our secret. So I'm going back up once I put my fringe in, and I'm going up looking for the middle. Now, I am not going to count exactly where the middle is here because it's sort of pointless. I am just going to count how many beads I have in between where I get to the middle so that I know on the other side to use that same amount, which is a number 5. So I have 5 beads that I've skipped through with this fringe. Now, this is where it gets kind of tough, is deciding whether you want the middle fringe to be longer or just let it go. I think I'm going to let it go on this piece just because I've got so much going on. All these little skulls are so busy, but I love it. I love all the stuff going on. I love all the sparkles and the colors, and if you haven't noticed from my work, I'm all about the colors. So I'm just going back up, and now I'm going to skip 5 beads and come out the other side. And so I'm just going to add the other fringe, and then I'll come back with the finished necklace. So here's the finished necklace. It's a basic choker size necklace, and you can see with all the colors, I used these beads on here are my flower canes that I've just put on a piece of scrap clay and made a ball and squished it, and these are the fantasy leaf cane that I've just made into little balls, and I've used just my leftover colors that I didn't like as filler. So it's a very simple necklace. Now that you've seen me string it, it's not very much to do. The skulls will take you some time, so good luck with that. But other than that, it's worth the time. I really love this necklace, and I hope you enjoyed my tutorial. Thanks a lot for watching.